Hey everybody, my name's Cabra, my pronoun is they. Welcome or welcome back to Steel City Witch. Today we're going to be starting a new segment on the channel called Book Report. Basically, there are a lot of books out there that can be very useful for pagans to read, but not everybody has time to read them. So sometimes if you hear a book report, either it helps you get the key ideas and know the history without having to spend money and time you don't have, or it can help you understand that a book might really be worth your money and time. Um, so today we're going to start with a problematic fave, uh, Women Who Run with the Wolves, Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype by uh, Clarissa Pincola Estés, who is a PhD. I think specifically she does therapy and she focuses on therapy with women. The author also talks about having two very strong storytelling traditions in her familial background, which is Mexican, I believe, and Eastern European. So, what she's trying to do in these stories is that she will tell you the story and then she will break down why the story has a lesson that's very important for women today, right? So, in case you haven't already guessed it, the book does have one really glaringly obvious problem, which is that it's very, very cisgendered. Um, there is a lot of uh, equating womanhood with having a womb. There's a lot of not mentioning or even thinking trans women exist. Unless somebody has a recent blog post or social media post from Dr. Estes, I'd like to give her the benefit of the doubt and believe that she was just working with out of date information. Because I'd really like to actually start by cracking the cover here. Let's see when this thing was written. Let's see here. 1972. Nope, that's an excerpt. Let's see here. First edition was in 92. Okay, so maybe she might be turfy. I have to go do some research on that one. But let's take a look here at the contents. And I think I'm actually going to try and pull this camera down a little. There we go. Now it looks legible. So let's look at the stories. The first is La Loba, the Wolf Woman, and the Four Ravenim. This is not really so much a full story as like a thematic introduction. In Bluebeard, she does talk about sexual assault and gendered violence. Each of these subsections is a lesson she's trying to teach you from the story. Bluebeard is a lot about coming back to your instincts. Now, we're not victim blaming here, but we are saying that women get gaslit like a lot, right? Cis women, trans women, feminine, non-binary people, regardless of your assigned birth gender, you get gaslit a lot. And as a result, it's really hard for you to trust your natural instincts about where do you want to be? Where do you not want to be? Do you like this person? Do you not like this person? Is this dangerous or not? Right? And Bluebeard is about finding that, about moving through the gaslighting to be able to say, you know, this man has not been drinking the respect woman juice, and therefore I should get away from him as fast as possible. Or this person is just generally toxic and bad for me, and I should leave before we get embroiled with each other. But she goes into a lot better sort of discussion of that. Vasilisa the Wise continues this idea that you can reconnect with your intuition and make good decisions by leaning on that. This also digs into this idea that I'm not super a fan of, where like blood family is with you forever. It's like, no, if your blood family was intergenerationally abusive and refuses to like really face that with you, and you've decided to cut them out and like get therapy and like make your life better, I fully believe it's possible to cut ties with blood family. But in this case, it's not a situation where um, her blood relation who's helping her from beyond the grave is abusive. It's actually that was a loving person in her life, and what follows from beyond the grave is love. So that's one thing that I want to be really clear about. That's not necessarily made clear in this one. Um, him for the wild man, Manawi. I don't even remember this. It was super heterosexual. I am sure it was a good story for some people, but like I don't even remember it. Um, let's see here. The Ugly Duckling. I am not even a woman, and I loved The Ugly Duckling. I cried. I ugly sobbed on public transportation reading this one because it's a really good thing at understanding intergenerational problems, right? How the ugly duckling has an issue, and then she turns and points out, what does that say about the ugly duckling's mother? Right. So it's just a lot of really, really peak insight. Not that Dr. Estes doesn't have insight this entire book, just that for me, this was like my favorite chapter. I'm going to admit I don't remember the Skeleton Woman story either. Joyous Body, Wild Flesh is another one of those shorter bits. The Red Shoes. The Red Shoes is a really important one. Short version of the story, a little girl gets red shoes and then dances herself to death. I promise you there's more to the story than that. There's like a lot of nuance. There's a lot of good insight in this short tale, obviously because there's all of this. But this is about not getting trapped, right? The gilded cage, the dry old woman burning the treasure, injury to the basic instinct. Again, this had a lot of really tough love. And I was raised by a Latina, so I felt a lot of my mother's wisdom in this story and also in the Bluebeard story, that sometimes danger is right next to you the entire time, and that you need to trust yourself when you feel like this is not a good place for me to be. That also turns into a running theme. Sealskin Soulskin is a favorite of a friend of mine. Basically, there's a woman who has a sealskin. Her husband hides it from her. One day she gets it, she leaves, she never comes back. And this is talking about how women, by constantly being gaslit and put under a lot of pressure to be who they're not, get taken away from a sense of being at home within themselves. And I think, honestly, that doesn't happen to just women. It happens to a lot of subsections of the population and people who are minoritized and who have stories told about them without them being able to tell their own stories. So I can definitely see why this is my friend's favorite story of this entire book. La Llorona is pretty straightforward. If you haven't heard of it, La Llorona is a story of a woman who drowned her own children. So child death is a thing that happens. Actually, a lot of children die in this book. There's a lot of kids dying in this book. I'll spare you the details, right? The one thing I want to say is this little match girl story right here, another dead kid story. That one again had me ugly crying on the bus. It is an absolute 180 abuela moment with that story. Uh it's a whole thing. Balbo, the belly goddess in the Dirty Goddesses, is actually one excuse me, is actually one that a reclaiming witch collective that I am in used as an Imbolc ritual many, many, many moons ago. This is the fun bit. This is actually kind of the it's not that it's not challenging, it's just that it's the fun bit, right? So also, yeah, they do use the naughty words in here every once in a while. But again, it's retrieving a sacred sexuality, especially the idea of sex as a source of mutual pleasure, which I know is something that even in sex positive education, we don't always necessarily see being able to be talked about. So this is kind of like a good interlude between the little match girl and the next section, boundaries of rage and forgiveness. And again, this is a woman who's got what I like to call, like, for me as a person who was raised, who is Brazilian, whose partner has very strong Polish ancestry, there is a sort of resonance in between these two places that Dr. Estes comes from, of Latin America, especially Central America, and Eastern Europe, where tough love is like a real strong theory. Um, And this is about how sometimes being angry is the best way to solve the problem, right? And also about like what is forgiveness, and when we're told we should forgive, what does that mean, and should we actually, right? um this one I probably need to go back and read. Membership in the Scar Clan. This is definitely yeah, this is definitely about learning to be wise but not hard. And then I'm going to be honest with you, I couldn't finish La Selva Subterránea, Initiation in the Underground Forest, because it got really hetero and I just like could not. And it also became a lot about birthing physical children, and I just could not. I also haven't done Canto Hongo, the Deep Song. So that's kind of like a very, very quick jump through this. And it is a long book. One thing I will say is that each section stands on its own merit. So if you don't want to read a particular story because you are like, oh, the red shoes, the kid might die, I'm out. The little match girl, the kid dies, I'm out, right? Bluebeard, sexual assault discussions, I'm out. There is nothing wrong with skipping a story in this book. If you get to a story and it's too cisgendered or too heterosexual or too like it's just going to be like unhealthy for you to read it, this is definitely a text where even if you only read one story, you're going to get a lot of it. And the thing that you heard me say a lot when I was talking about the contents of the book is about tough love. And when we come back to this sort of preamble called The Howl, and she talks about La Loba, the wolf woman, she's talking about fierce love. She's talking about a mother who bites. She's talking about a lover who bites. Not the fun way either, the get off me way, right? The I will tear it off if you touch me with it again way. Um, and so that's the thing that she's talking about, right? Throughout this entire book is that there is a kind of love that instead of being, oh, honey, that's okay. Oh, poor baby, that's okay. There's an amount of that is helpful for people, and then there's an amount of that is poisonous, right? And because also people can hide harm behind the nice. And Bluebeard, though I understand not everybody can read the story because there's so much sexual assault in it, and in the discussion that follows, right? It's another great example of how people are hiding their mean behind their nice, right? Like she is put in a dangerous situation by her family, and her family's being nice to her the whole time, but they're not loving her. They're not caring for her. Um, so yeah, that's Women Who Run with the Wolves in terms of the content. So let me get off my knees because I need to get knee pads for this one. Okay. Um, so let's talk a little bit about what the story men means to pagans. Basically, there is a running thing in pagan circles, and this is something especially strong in Reclaiming Witchcraft, where you take an old story and you make a ritual out of it, and by walking through the story as the protagonist, you take these lessons away from it in a way that's embodied. You don't just think about the red shoes, you literally move until you can't move anymore. And I admit for some people, you get up, you dance 2 steps, and because you may have movement issues, that's the end. Your knees are going to hurt tomorrow. Stop right before you hurt yourself. For me, I could probably go for like 3 days. Well, I could probably go until midnight, and then after midnight I start turning into a pumpkin. If I dance until 2 in the morning, I'm hurting myself. Unless the music is really good, then maybe I'll go till 3. Anyway, so the point is, sorry, that was an unnecessary tangent. I just really miss being able to go dancing, and I hate this pandemic. So that's the idea, is that you take these stories and you move through them, you live through them, right? And you ask the question while you're in the middle of the ritual reenactment of these parts of these stories, when has this been me? So let's go to the sealskin one, right? When has someone taken your sealskin and put it in a box and told you you can't go home? You can't be home with yourself. But in order for you to ask that question, right, you might go through a ritual. So someone might come up to you and be like, listen, I am going to take and hide a piece of your jewelry that's very important to you so that you can physically feel what it's like to have that piece taken away. It's going to be a lot, but in that moment in sacred space, you're going to need to feel that discomfort and where it resonates with previous moments in your life, so that when you inevitably take it back and run away, you will also take back the thing that was taken back previously, right? Like it's kind of like somatically moving through the narrative as metaphor in a way that's like very very personal. And I think that that is a really powerful kind of ritual, and I think that this book provides a lot of good idea about how do we read, how do we do a feminist psychological analysis of these tales, how do we find tales that have wisdom for people in different positions, especially for people trying to overcome being gaslit, uh, and what have you. So that's the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? To round it up, the good, Dr. Estes has a lot of wisdom about what does it mean to have tough love, and what does it mean to be in touch with your intuition, and what does it mean to like make it through a world that's not always got your best interests at heart, without being hard and without like closing yourself off to love, um, which is great. And then cons, it's turfy, it's hetero, it's old. I mean, I'm sure this book felt a little outdated when it came out in 1992 on some social justice issues. So there's that. Uh, but yeah, there's some really great wisdom in there, but you have to make it through some, I think, kind of some blind spots for the author to really get to it. If you are a person who has a strong stomach for um, like cisnormativity and heteronormativity, if you're a person who's got a strong stomach for hearing stories about, dead kids and sexual assault, because you really want to get the wisdom of basically somebody's like abuela and whatever the Eastern European babushka, yeah, abuela babushka, rolled into one, giving you, hey, this is how tough love works. This is what you're going to need to survive. Don't let them lie to you about your own survival. Like this is a good book for that. I'm trying to think if there's any other uh, potentially triggering information I might have missed. Talks about depression a little bit. Yeah. I think that's it. I think that's it. So yeah, thanks for coming with me on this book report. If there is a dusty old book that you would like a 20-minute video summarizing and talking about, please feel free to drop it in the comments. If I missed something in this book, either something you really loved about it or something that you didn't like about it, please also feel free to drop that in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one. 93.